Did you guys have any movies growing up that like freaked you out as a kid that later on you're like, I don't know why that movie was not that scary. For me, I would have nightmares. Okay, about the movie Holes. Have you guys seen the movie Holes? Like the movie Holes, like it freaked me out. And I don't know why. I don't know why it freaked me out, but it did. I don't know if you've ever seen it before. Basically, premise of the story is some guy named Stanley. He gets in trouble or he gets wrongly accused for stealing something. He gets sent to this camp where his job is to just go dig holes all day, every day. And I was scared because I thought if I do something wrong to my parents, maybe they'll send me to a camp like this and I'll have to go out to the middle of the desert and dig holes. But also, I was so afraid of the lizard. You guys have you seen the movie The Lizard? The yellow spotted lizard or something like that is like deadly. Anyway, all that to say, that movie scared me. It's really not that scary of a movie. You can go watch it this week if you really want to. But anyway, the movie Holes, they're digging. Stanley and his best friend Zero, they hit it off, and then they just dig and dig and dig every day, right? And then there's some drama with some family history and stuff like that. And then eventually, Stanley and Zero are digging, and they hit what they think is a box, right? And then they find this like hidden treasure in one of these holes, and it's covered in the lizards or whatever. But basically what happens is they dig for long enough, they dig so many holes in a widespread fashion that eventually they end up striking gold. They eventually strike a hidden treasure, and they find this treasure out in the middle of one of these holes. And this picture right here over my shoulder is what I think a lot of people view Bible study, Bible reading. That if I just dig and I dig a 6-foot deep hole, eventually, if I don't get it here and I don't get it there and I don't get it there, eventually I'm going to strike gold. Eventually, I'm going to find a hidden treasure. I don't know if you have ever felt this right here in your own spiritual disciplines, in your own everyday in the Word, in your own reading of the Bible. You've read a passage before and you've been like, what? Like, I don't know. And then you close your Bible and then you worry about it the next day. And then other times you open the Bible and it's very clear. It's like, love one another, or encourage one another, or share the gospel with someone. And you're like, okay, very understanding. I get it. I understand it. Now I can go do it. I think people view Bible reading and Bible study just like this. But I don't think this is an accurate picture of what it looks like to study the Bible. That eventually, if you just keep digging holes all over these, eventually you'll find treasure. Today, we are finding ourselves in a passage that if you dug a 6-foot hole, you would probably find zero treasure. You would not understand. If this was in your Bible reading, you would probably read this section that we have today, and you would skip over it, and you would go to the next thing, and you'd be like, no treasure found here. I'll go read somewhere else. I'll go read Ephesians, or I'll go read James, or I'll go read 1 John. I'll go read something else that makes more sense. Today, what we're going to do is we're not going to be Shia LaBeouf in the movie Holes. We're not going to be Zero. We're not going to be those guys. We're going to be some offshore riggers. Like, you've seen these oil rigs out in the middle of the ocean before? Basically, what these oil rigs, if you go to Seal Beach or something like that, you see these oil rigs way out in the distance, where basically they're digging for oil. But to dig for oil way out in the middle of the water, you got to go through thousands of feet of water, right? And then you got to go through thousands of feet of earth under the water, right? The ground under where the ocean is. And so I was even just looking at this the big one here, the semi-submersible platform, if you knew what that is, like 7,000 feet of water, and then it says it can go down 40,000 feet under that. So there is some intentional deep digging from these offshore oil rigs, right? And then eventually, when they dig far enough, they find their treasure after they do the hard work of digging. And so today, what we're doing is we are going to have to dig deep, dig very deep, because what we're going to do this morning is we are going to do 7 chapters today in our sermon, okay? I've never done that, I think, in my life. 7 chapters. And these 7 chapters, if you are reading Joshua, are the 7 chapters that you probably would speed read, that you probably would maybe even just skip over and say, I'm not going to read my Bible that day, I'll read it tomorrow, because it's just a bunch of land. And so I'd like you to open up to Joshua chapter 13, and we're going to go all the way to 19. Are we going to read all 7 chapters? No, we're not, okay? So you're like, whew. And I'm like, whew, because there's a lot of really hard names to pronounce here in this section. But today we're going to dig deep, and we are going to have to find some treasure deep under the surface. And so this sermon is going to probably look and sound a little different than a normal sermon. It's a sermon that if you fall asleep in the first 10 minutes, you might lose your spot, and you might really not know where we are. So I want to encourage you, stay awake, stay attentive, keep that pen in your hand, and we're going to do some digging together. And it might be hard, and it might sound like a class, and there might be some things that maybe you scratch your head about. But I want to show you today that if we dig deep into these 7 chapters here, we will see how we, as New Testament Christians, can be more faithful to God in terms of our obedience. We can trust God more. We can have deeper faith in him. And then we will, our lives, I think, with these 7 chapters can be sanctified, can be improved in that sense. We can grow in our relationship with God if we see this if we see these chapters as not just a list of names, a list of cities. And it's not the booms, okay? We're not doing that today. We're just like, hey, here's a city, and then it goes up over here, and then there's another city, and then there's another city over here. So basically, it's a big, long list of Joshua saying, hey, guys, this is what your land is. This is what your neighbor's land is. This is what your neighbor's land is. And we're going to have to dig deep. And so I've never done this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the full outline of my sermon on the screen, okay? Don't write it down, okay? You see that? That was for you, some of you, right? Some of you. You don't need to write down. This is the outline of what we're going to cover today. It's going to function as 2 different things. We're going to function as a lecture, Old Testament survey class, and then point number 2 is going to be, we'll call it the sermon, okay? So this is where we're going to go today, and we're going to try to make sure that we understand this better, and we even have fun maps if you have a worksheet, okay? So let's do it. You can write down for point number 1. Now you can write it down, point number 1. Write it down. This is the Old Testament survey class. This is the lecture. This is Professor Matt, okay? PM, Professor Matt. And then point number 2 will be PM, Pastor Matt, okay? Which I don't even have you write down points before you even get to the text, but I'm just telling you today, trust me on this one, okay? Point number 1, know why the land promises are important, because what we're going to have today is a bunch of land and a bunch of promises about this land is your land, and then this land is your land, and then this land is your land. Kind of like that old American song, right? This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Isle. Go look it up later. Or don't. Actually, don't. It's a dumb song. I listened to it this week. Okay. Know why the land promises are important. If you've made it there, Joshua chapter 13 is where we are at right now. And we're going to see kind of this transition in the book from getting land to moving into the land. And so we've seen this picture, seen this map on the left side a lot, right? So when the people of Israel, they get all of these cities, they go destroy these kings, they go take over, burn these cities down with fire, they go take over the land. But now we're in a section where they are now going to be moving into the land. And so the map is going to look a little bit different. And so we've got the getting the land and then the moving in. And so right now today we are in the moving in portion of the book of Joshua. So look at chapter 13. Let's read verses 1 to 7. And then let's kind of set the scene of where we're at. Joshua 13 verse 1 says, Now Joshua was old and advanced in years, and the Lord said to him, You are old and advanced in years. Thanks so much, God. And then it says, There remains yet very much of the land to possess. AKA, they haven't finished yet. He says, verse 2, this is the land that yet remains. All the regions of the Philistines, all of those of the Gershonites, from Shihor, which is east of Egypt, northward to the boundary of Ekron, as counted as Canaanite. There are 5 rulers of the Philistines, those of Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. And all those are the Avim in the south, the lands of the Canaanites, the Merari, and then that belongs with the Sidonians, so the Aphek, the boundaries of the Amorites, all these lists of places, right? And then it says in verse 6, it says, all the inhabitants of the hill country, from Lebanon to Mizrephath-Maim, even the Sidonians. And then God says this, okay? If you zoned out for that, God says this, verse 6, second half of verse 6, he says, I myself, this is God talking, I myself will drive those people out before the people of Israel. And he tells Joshua this, only allot the land to Israel for an inheritance, as I have commanded you. And then therefore, divide this land for an inheritance to the 9 tribes and to the half tribe of Manasseh. So what he has here is, I've heard people ask this question before. I thought we have been reading about the people of Israel getting the land and taking over these cities, and it says that they did a good job. Like we read places in what we've read in the past that they did what God told them to do. And now we have in chapter 13, it sounds like they didn't do what they should have done. And so what he explains here is that there are some big portions of this promised land that they have not yet gone in and destroyed. So there's still some, we'll call them squatters, if you will, still people in the land. But he says here, what I want you to do is I want you to divide this land up where everyone gets their piece, and then all of those people in those little pieces of land, that tribe is supposed to go in and take them over. He says, God says he will drive out the land. But instead of all of Israel doing it, each tribe will do it to their own little spot. So to illustrate it, think about it like this. If you purchase a plot of land to go build a house, let's just say it's in the forest or something like that. If you purchase a plot of land, the first thing that you have to do is you have to go clear that land, right? So if you're trying to go build a house in this area, you got to go cut down the trees, right? You got to go rip all the roots up. You got to do some excavator work to go level it out so that you can then eventually build a house on it. And so what he says here is that now officially this land is your land. And now what you have to do is you have to do the work to finish clearing out the job. Okay, so the big tree cutters, they've come in, but there's a lot of stuff still left to do. And so he says, this is your plot. Now you got to go clear it, is the idea that he's trying to say. And so what he has in chapters 13 to 19 is all of the plots, kind of like a subdivision. Okay, all of you suburbanites in this room, everyone here from the burbs, because we live in Orange County, this is what our neighborhoods used to look like when they were on paper. It's called a subdivision, right? You probably live in a subdivision, especially if you live in Irvine, if you live in Tustin as well, or in an unincorporated part of Tustin as well too. It's a subdivision where a long time ago, it was on a piece of paper like this, boxes, right? Your house had a little plot, a little box of land. And, before, you were born or whatever, that your parents, they purchased, or maybe in your lifetime, or maybe not, I don't know. They purchased that little box of land. Most likely your parents didn't have to build their house with their hands. Some of your parents did. If that's what your dad did, cool for him. Really cool guy. But most of you, plot of land, there's a house that is on it, and that is officially your property. If you go out to your sidewalks and you see those little like shiny coin looking things on the sidewalk, that is your property line of this. On this side of the line, that's your house. On that side of the line, that is your neighbor's house. And so what Joshua chapter 13 to 19 is basically this right here, suburbia, right? This is your plot. This is your neighbor's plot. This is your neighbor's plot. And so again, that's why we're not going to read every single word. As you can tell, I already botched a few of them. Like, we're not going to read every single plot, every single subdivision. But to give you a picture of what these chapters are all about, it's suburbia right there. Okay. So with that, now that you have your plot of land, now your job as a person in Israel is to go clear your land. So to go build your house, you've cleared your land. Now you have to then go do the work of building the house, right? So you've got your land. Now you got to build your house. If you go to the next slide. Got your land, now you got to move in to your home. You got to build your house. So, now that we've got some visual pictures of what's going on, hopefully I didn't lose you yet, let's summarize, okay? Let's summarize where we're going to go. So, to give you guys a very brief outline of Joshua 13 to 19, I would say this. And if you want to write it down, you totally can. You don't have to. But this is just a simplified outline of these 7 chapters that we're not going to read in perfect detail. So the first part that we just read, verses 1 to 7, it's kind of this overview of this land that has yet to be conquered, where he basically says, here's your plot. You got to go in and clear that plot. You got to go in and take out the people that are there, the squatters that are there on your land. Then we'll have the eastern tribes, which long time ago we looked at that. A couple of tribes were on the east side of the Jordan. It's just a reminder of what God has given them in chapter 13. And then basically from chapters 14 to 19, it's all of the tribes on the western side of the Jordan, on the promised land side of the Jordan, who then get their land. And then it ends at the very end when the people of Israel, they go give a thank you gift to their leader, to Joshua, and they say, hey, here you go. Here's your plot of land. So 2.5 tribes on the east side, 9.5, if you're doing your math kind of rightly, on the western side of the Jordan. So easiest way to illustrate it is with a meme. This is kind of overall what's going on in Joshua 13 to 19 is basically everyone, you get your land, right? Like the Oprah, you get land, everyone gets land. And so that's what we're going here. So with that, don't write that down, by the way. Don't write that down, okay? Don't need to write this next slide down either, but this is just a detailed outline that I've created for this passage here. Actually, no, we're not even to that point yet, are we? Okay, that's right, we're not. Chapter 14. Chapter 14 explains all these different tribes, which if you've been at the church long enough, you've heard of the tribes of Israel. They basically come from the sons of the sons of Jacob, rather. And then Joseph, one of his sons, then has 2 more sons, and basically that's where we get these tribes of Israel. So if you go to the next slide, these are the 12 tribes of Israel. You don't need to write that down either. We looked at that a really long time ago in Joshua chapter 1, a.k.a. we've got the big country, and then we got the states, if you will. Probably the easiest way for you to explain it, okay? The United Tribes of Israel. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, brief outline. We see these tribes laid out on the next slide of where we're going in this text. So, look back at chapter 14 rather. We've got these western tribes, and then it starts off with this story of Caleb. We looked at this 2 weeks ago. You guys remember that? Story of Caleb, the old man, 85-year-old man that says, I want some land. And Joshua says, yep, you've been faithful to God. Here's your land. So we looked at that. If you forgot about that, you can go back, listen online for that. But Caleb, in the end of chapter 14, who is a part of Judah, so Judah gets their allotment of land, goes and explains all the different land that he has. If you look at chapter 15, it's a lot of names. It's a lot of cities. Flip your page to chapter 16. We see the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, who are Joseph's sons. Again, that's a whole different conversation, but chapter 16 and 17 is that. And then chapters 18 and 19 are basically all the rest where they kind of go in quick succession, all these different tribes. So with that, instead of walking through every verse of this passage, what I thought I would do for you is give you a map, okay? So you guys all got a map. You see your worksheets. Sorry to all you notebook people, okay? Tricia offered to cut all of your worksheets and then glue them into your notebooks. So you can go, her free services are after the service. I said stickers. That would be kind of cool, right? If there were stickers. But anyway, sorry for saying that. I shouldn't have said that. I take that back. Go to Trader Joe's if you want some stickers. A map to help you, because as I read this, I do remember the first time I read it this week, like in preparation for this, I was like, whew, this is going to be tough. So what I like to do for you is I like to do the hard work, and then I like to give you the easy work, some visuals. So here's a map. We're going to fill it in, kind of like this subdivision, everyone's plot of land. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill in the blanks. You see the code right there on the bottom of the map there. You've got numbers for each of these people. It's basically just the birth order of all of these tribes of Israel. And one who's not on the list, you see there, the footnote under the list is the tribe of Levi. He actually doesn't have if you go to the next slide, tribe of Levi doesn't actually have a plot of land. He's going to have cities, and we're going to look at that in chapter 21, which will be next week when we get back into Joshua. But anyway, Levi, you're not going to find him on the map. He was the third born of Jacob, so really he should be number 3, but to give you guys the list. Let's start here in chapter 13. Look at chapter 13, verse 15. This is referring back to Moses when he gave these people the land on the eastern side of the Jordan. The first plot, the first subdivision, the first house that he gives is to the people of Reuben there on the bottom right side, the red. So put number 1 there on the red, on the far right bottom side of the map. Joshua is not splitting this up. He is basically saying, hey guys, remember Moses already did this way back in the day. So it's just really a reminder of what took place. Then you drop your eyes down to verse 24. The next tribe that we have here, verse 24, Moses gave an inheritance also to the tribe of Gad. So Gad is number 6 rather. He's the second one we're doing. Number 6 is that Tia one. I'm going to call it the peace sign, the peace sign tribe right there on the eastern side of the Jordan. Remember, conquered by Moses, not conquered by Joshua. Then we've got the half tribe of Manasseh in verse 29, who also had that top portion, the top yellow on the right side, right down to number 10. If you guys remember, way back, Joshua chapter 1, everyone's favorite sermon, Help a Brother Out. You remember that sermon? About these 2.5 tribes going over and helping their brothers out as they were conquering the land. This was the diagram we gave you way back in the day of these 2.5 tribes going from the eastern side to go help their brothers fight and conquer the land. Okay, cool. Now we are on the western side of the Jordan. In chapter 14, verse 6 is the people of Judah. It's the Caleb request, but also chapter 15 is Judah. So I want you to write down number 3 on the purple. The big section on the bottom, the purple section, number 3. That is the people of Judah. And Caleb, he had a special spot that he asked for in that allotment. And in chapter 15, Caleb goes and he takes over this land with some help from another dude, single guy. Then he gives his daughter to this guy. Chapter 15. But as you can tell there from the purple, that's the biggest one. If you know anything about Judah, it's the one that is an important one because it's where all the kings came from. And eventually Jesus came from this land. If you guys know kind of the middle portion of the Old Testament when it talks about the kingdoms of Israel. You've got the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The southern kingdom was the purple. That's why they called them Judah, the southern kingdom there. So, next one. Ephraim, chapter 16, verse 5, it says Joshua gives to Ephraim, one of the sons of Joseph. This is the gray one. The gray one, number 11. Kind of right there just above the purple. That's Ephraim. This was the first of Joseph's sons. Well, actually, that's not true. He was the second-born, but he got the firstborn's blessing. Not that you asked, but that's what happened. And then we have Manasseh, which we already met on the eastern side of the Jordan. He now gets a plot of land on the western side as well. So we've got West Manasseh, and we've got East Manasseh. So on the yellow, if you see yellow, write down the number 10. You guys know the city of Samaria when Jesus was talking to the Samaritan woman? That was right there in the yellow on West Manasseh. Next one, a very, very important one. If you go to chapter 18, verse 11, the inheritance for the Benjaminites come up. That's the orange one. Write down number 12. Number 12 on the orange, right there above. This is Jerusalem. This is a really important city, right? A really important tribe of Israel. Paul, the Apostle Paul, he was a Benjaminite. So that's where he was from, more or less. New Testament, but more or less. Chapter 19, we meet the tribe of Simeon. We'll call that the mustard, right there, number 2, right in the middle of Judah, where it says basically he kind of got the short end of the stick a little bit. The tribe of Simeon, they basically got cities in the middle of Judah. So they were kind of surrounded on all sides. They got different pockets of land in the middle of Judah. Eventually, bad things happen to Simeon. They eventually kind of lose their spot, and they kind of go away eventually. So anyway, chapter 19, verse 10, we meet another one named the tribe of Zebulun. That's the blue one, number 9. The blue up north, number 9. That is Zebulun. Jesus ends up coming from this area. He's not a Zebulunite, but he grew up in Nazareth up there in that region. Did ministry over there. All right, chapter 19, verse 17, we meet the next one, the tribe of Issachar. Issachar is the brown one, number 8. Number 8, the brown one. Right there under the blue Zebulun. This is a farming region, made a lot of crops. Next one, verse 24 of chapter 19, is the tribe of Asher. Tribe of Asher, which is the dark green number 7 up at the top on the coast. They were some seafaring men up there. They did a lot of coastal trading and stuff like that. Asher, which is actually the Hebrew word for happy. They were the happy tribe. I don't know if you knew that. So put that on your Bible trivia. The happy tribe, Asher. Verse 32, next one, Naphtali. Naphtali is the pink one, number 5 up there on the top as well. The pink one. Kind of like Vermont, New Hampshire. Like that's how I kind of view like Asher and Naphtali, the little Vermont. No? Okay. This land is your land. This is Galilee. This is where Jesus, this is Capernaum. This is where Jesus does a lot of ministry up there in the north. Last one, verse 40, we meet the last guy. His name is Dan. Dan is the lime green there on the middle section, verses 40 to 48. This is a Philistine area, and eventually Dan doesn't do their job. The Philistines come in, big bad Goliath, and they kind of take them over, and they kind of scatter them, and they push them out of that region. Not Goliath, but Goliath's people. So there you guys go. There's a map of these tribes so that when you read these verses and you read all of these names, now you kind of know what we're talking about. And you're asking yourselves the question of like, maybe some of you are like, hey, no one asked for this. Some people did ask actually for this. But if you are just like, I don't know why this matters at all, why are we studying? Like, why should I know this? I want you to write down for subpoint A. I want you to write this down. Because what all of this map, all of this land, it showcases God's promise-keeping abilities. If God did not provide this land, God would be a liar. Guys, I want you to hear that again. If God did not provide this land, he would be a liar. That would be a big deal. If we just worshiped a liar God, like that would be a problem. But this map is proof that God is faithful to his promises, which means that you can put your trust in God too. If God is faithful to Israel, he will be faithful to you. If God is unfaithful to Israel, then he would be unfaithful to you too. And why should you even trust him at all? Where do we get this promise? Way back, we talked about this a long time ago, Genesis chapter 12, when God makes a promise to Abraham. And he says basically, Abraham, go to this area, to this map, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And he brings Abraham to this land. And he says, I will make you a great nation in this land, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great so that you will be a blessing. What God promises to Abraham actually comes true when the people break down this map here in Joshua chapters 13 to 14. So this map is really proof that God is trustworthy. And that's a big deal. That applies to every single person in this room. Have you ever doubted God? Had you ever feared that God won't show up? God is a promise-keeping God, and you can remember this map. God promised it to Abraham. God promised it to Moses. God promised it to Joshua, and it happened. So therefore, we see God's promise-keeping abilities. The second thing that this land, and why it's important, is it also provides a place for God's people to dwell with him. Subpoint B. It provides a place for God's people to dwell with him. That's really, really important. It's a geographical location for the people of God to gather together and to worship God and to be with God. They were sojourners. They were foreigners. Remember, they were in Egypt. They were wandering around in the wilderness. God finally gives them home. He says, this is your home. This is where you're going to be, and I'm going to be with you. You can write down Leviticus 26, 11 through 13. Leviticus 26, 11 through 13. It says, I will make my dwelling among you. And this is God talking. My soul will not abhor you. I will walk among you, and I will be your God, and you shall be my people. I, the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, that you should not be their slaves. What he says here is, I'm going to bring you out of Egypt, and I'm going to bring you to this place where I am going to be your God, you are going to be my people, and I will dwell with you. So back in the day, this piece of land, all of these areas that you just wrote down on this map was important, because this is where God dwelled with his people. At the temple in Jerusalem, God dwelled with his people in this conquered land, in this place that they moved into, right there on that little yellow star. They had to have a place to worship God. And this is what God does, again, long time ago, or long time after our passage here. So it's important to them, but it's also, in one sense, it's even a reminder for us that we will one day dwell with God geographically as well. So you can write down Revelation 21, verses 2 and 3. Revelation 21, verses 2 and 3. It says, I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. Every Christian in the room, that is a promise to you, that you will one day dwell with God in the New Jerusalem forever and ever. It will be a geographical location. Where is it located on planet Earth? It's not on planet Earth, because it will be a new heavens and a new earth. God will destroy the earth that we're on now, and he will welcome us in a geographical spot with us in the New Jerusalem, where we will dwell with him as his people, and he will be our God, just like the people of Israel here in this promised land. That's important. Third reason why this is important, subpoint C, it also provides here's a big word, not big word, it's not a big word. Here's words. Provides a geographical epicenter for the Messiah. You didn't think you would think about the word epicenter today unless an earthquake happened. Provides a geographical epicenter for the Messiah, for Jesus to come. This land is Jesus' land. This land is where Jesus is from. This land actually has affected your life if you're a Christian, and has changed it. Not necessarily this land, but what happened in this land. Epicenter. Because you live in California, I don't think I need to explain this, but an epicenter is the center of an earthquake, okay? So when there's an earthquake, there's one space where the tectonic plates, they move, and then it kind of moves up above on the crust of the earth and shakes someplace, and you can feel it reverberate out from sometimes tens of miles, sometimes hundreds of miles, depending on the strength of the earthquake. Israel is an epicenter for where the Messiah, where he came from. So, where was Jesus born? He was born in this promised land, right? He was born in Bethlehem, right there in the tribe of Judah. Bethlehem, right next to Jerusalem. So Jesus was born there, and then Jesus grew up, and then he got baptized there in, if you go to the next slide, somewhere in the area of, maybe the West Manasseh, or Ephraim doesn't really touch, but somewhere in that region, just above Benjamin, Jesus was baptized. And then Jesus did all of his ministry up north at the Sea of Galilee, in the land of Naphtali, and in the land of Zebulun. There's actually a prophecy in the Old Testament about Jesus will come and do ministry in these two tribes' area. And then he eventually, obviously, died in Jerusalem, right? And then he rose again there as well. So we see Jesus born, we see him baptized, we see him do ministry, we see him die, we see him rise again right here in this location, in these cities that you just read. That's a big deal, where this region of the world is now an epicenter of this salvation work that echoes out all across the world. Israel has affected the entire world. That's kind of a big deal if you think about it. Jesus was called the King of the Jews. When he died, he had that little sign over the top of him where it said the King of the Jews, right? And probably you're not Jewish, right? Probably you're not Jewish. So how does this affect you? Jesus, in Israel, as the King of the Jews, he is now affected as this epicenter to make waves all across the world. Think about it. We are talking about a Middle Eastern Jewish man 2,000 years ago that was born, and that's who you just worship to. Israel is this epicenter, if you go to the next slide, for the rest of the world, where it's affected everything, every corner of the world. Go make disciples of all nations. Where did that start? Right here in this promised land. So therefore, all that to say, this is a big deal. Last thing, real quick on this, because I don't want to spend too much time on this. Subpoint D, it also foreshadows Israel's future land restoration. When one day, I believe, they will go move back into their land. Wait a minute, I thought there was a country called Israel, and there's a whole issue going on with Israel and Gaza, and like, what's going on here? I would say this is why you should care about Israel. This is why you should care even about what goes on in the news right now. Because one day, the Bible says that Israel will move back into the land. Cross-reference on that. Don't need to turn there or anything. Just write down Ezekiel 37, verses 24 and 25. Long story short, summarize, says basically the people of Israel, they're going to have David, the servant David, a.k.a. Jesus, is going to sit on the throne, and these people will dwell in the land that I gave to my servant Jacob. This promised land. So, in other words, Israel will be back. They are back in a geopolitical sense. But I believe the Bible talks about, very specifically speaking, Israel will be back in this land that you just read about here. Sorry, you didn't read it. I just summarized for you in these verses, Joshua 13 to 19. So, that's a lot of info about the land. I promise Professor Matt is done. So with that, I'd like you to write down point number 2, the sermon. Hey, don't clap too hard for Professor Matt being gone, okay? Point number 2, what can we learn from the land allotments? What can we learn? Where's the sermon in this sermon? Although now you know the land. You know, it was really cool. This week I gave the map to PE, and I was like, hey, can you fill this out? And he's like, I know where Judah and Benjamin are. And I was like, right on. Like everyone in this, you can take your map and go show it to PE after and be like, hey, Naphtali, it's the pink one up here on the top. Duh, right? You know? Don't do that. But, well, do it. Actually, that's fine. He would love that if you did that. Now you know where the land. That's kind of helpful. It's kind of helpful. But what can you learn from this? How are we going to actually apply this into our lives? Well, this land is really an example of God blessing his people because they were obedient to him by going and getting this land. So subpoint A, write down this way. That God will always provide if you are obedient. God will always provide if you are obedient. If you are an obedient son or daughter of God, there is blessings that will come for your obedience. We see that really all throughout these passages here. Chapter 13, these 2.5 tribes, they were blessed for their obedience. They got this land. There was blessing that came to Caleb after he had wholly followed the Lord, is what it says. There was blessing, and he got his land. Ask yourselves the question, do you really believe that God will take care of you if you obey him? Because it is a hard thing to obey God in 2025 in the United States of America. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing for you to do it as a teenager at your schools. Is it worth it? Will God provide for you? What if you lose friends? What if you don't get into the college you want? What if you lose your job? What if all of those bad things that you just thought of in your head, what if those things do happen? Do you believe that God will really provide for you? This map right here is proof that God provides for his people because they were obedient to him. You write down Psalm 37, verses 25 to 27. Psalm 37, 25 to 27. Psalmist says this. He says, I've been young and now I'm old, yet I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his children begging for bread. He's ever lending generously and his children become a blessing. Turn away from evil and do good so that you shall dwell forever. The idea here is that God is going to be faithful to those who are righteous. Watching Israel move into the land should be an encouragement to you to obey God this week. If I obey God, God's going to take care of me. God is going to bless me. Maybe not with millions of dollars, but God will take care of me. Do you believe that? That God will be faithful to you if you obey him. Something else that we learned, subpoint B, is that God also divvies up these blessings in varying degrees. I'll explain what I mean by that. Divvies up. I've never used that word in a sermon point before. I actually didn't even know how to spell it. I kept misspelling it. Divvies up. 2 V's. D-I-V-V-I-E-S. To divvy up something is to split something up in different sections, in different areas. Organize, if you will, but more the opposite of organize. You're spreading things out in the way that you want them to go. Chapter 18, we see God basically decide these different plots of land for each of these tribes. And he does so with these things called casting lots, which we don't have a really good framework of what that is in today's day and age. This is how Israel back in the day, they would seek God's will in this way. So it was, think about it like this. So think about like a dice or something like that. It's like, God, we're going to assign 1 to this tribe, 2 to this tribe, 3 to this tribe, 4 to that tribe. We're going to roll the dice, and wherever you want it to land, we will give those people to your land. So it was their way of like, in a sense, like submitting their will to God. Random chance. And again, we don't see in the New Testament like, hey, thou shalt cast lots this week to figure out what the will of the Lord is. We have our Bibles. We're not casting lots anymore, but this was their way of basically figuring out God's will. And this was actually commanded to them. Chapters 18, verses 1 to 10. We see that little story play out. But if you throw the map back on the screen, you see here that there's different plots, there's different sizes, there's different areas. Like, what if you wanted a coastline? What if you were a beach girly? Like, what if you wanted to be over there, but like you were in the landlocked Ephraim, or like you had the spot over here on the eastern side of the Jordan that you didn't really want? God breaks it out, and God does exactly where He wants. It puts everyone exactly where He wants them to be. God is right every single time. Therefore, when you obey God, you will get blessed by God, but God will bless your neighbor differently. Sometimes He will bless them more than you. Sometimes God will bless them less than you. But you have to remember, God is always right. God knows how to give His blessings. He knows how to give them the right way. Is this fair right here? Like, look at like Judah, like, dude, he's got like a really big spot. Why does Simeon have to get scattered in the middle of Judah? Like, how is that fair? I don't know. God decided it. Therefore, it is good and it is right. So if God blesses you with a lot of stuff, if God blesses you with a lot of good things in your life, say thank you for that. Steward those things well. If God has given you a little bit, don't look over the fence at your neighbor and say, I wish I had what they had. That kind of brings us to the next point in chapters 17. You look at chapter 17, verse 14. Joshua 17, verse 14. We see some discontentment take place in the lives of some of these tribes. Specifically, the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. The two tribes of Joseph, if you will, the sons of Joseph. Look at this here with me. They weren't happy with what they got. And some of you in this room are very much like Ephraim and Manasseh. You are not happy with the things God has given you. Listen to this here. Joshua 17, verse 14. It says, the people of Joseph, this is Ephraim and Manasseh, they spoke to Joshua, saying, why have you given me but one lot and one portion as an inheritance? Although I am a numerous people, since all along the Lord has blessed me. Do you hear the dripping like pride and spoiled bratness of that right there? And so Joshua says to them, he says, okay, guys, if you are numerous people, go up by yourself to the forest and then clear ground for yourselves in the land of the Perizzites and the Rephaim, since the hill country of Ephraim is too narrow for you. So he basically says, all right, guys, you go do the work. The people of Joseph said, the hill country is not enough for us. Yet all the Canaanites who dwell in the plain, they've got chariots of iron, both those in Bashan and in their villages in the valley of Jezreel. And Joshua said to the house of Joseph, to Ephraim and to Manasseh, you are a numerous people, and you have great power. You shall not have one allotment only, but the hill country shall be yours. For though it is a forest, you shall clear it and possess it to its farthest borders, and you shall drive out the Canaanites, though they have chariots of iron, and though they are strong. In other words, what we have here in this story is some discontentment. And I think that's good for every single person in this room to look at themselves and to make sure that we don't have that as well. Subpoint C, right down this way, be content with what God gives you. Be content with what God gives you. What they say here is they complain. It says only one portion, which AKA, like, come on, guys. Manasseh, you guys had two portions, right? That was the big yellow one. They're on both sides. Like, why are you guys complaining? Ephraim got like a prime location of like great farmland. Why are you complaining? Only one lot, only one portion, he says in verse 14. And I love Joshua's solution. It's such a dad response there. Like, all right, go do it yourself then. It's like, okay. And then they whine about it, right? And they say this. They says, this is not enough for us, right? They complain about this plot of land. This is not enough. This big area, it's not enough for us. It's like the whiny kid complaining about their present at Christmas time that says, oh, this present's not enough, right? Some of you in this room do this with God. Some of you complain that your family is not good enough. Some of you complain that the amount of money that you have is not good enough. Some of you complain that your relationship status is not good enough. And what it says here is Joshua calls them out and says, guys, stop it. Like, he says, stop it. Stop being whiny babies about it. Look at everyone else. Everyone else is very thankful, right? No matter big or small. Like, you know, the avocado kid, like, oh, avocado, thanks. Like every other tribe is whether they got an avocado or whether they got a really big, nice present. The point here is, you got to be thankful. Be content with what you have and not acting like what you have, God messed up and is not enough for you. As you think about the avocado kid, I want you to write down Philippians chapter 4, okay? I don't know, that was first off the top of your tongue. Avocado kid, Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 to 13, right? Steph Curry's favorite verse, Tim Tebow's favorite verse. Philippians 4, 11 through 13. Let's read it in context. For those of you in this room that are discontent about your stuff, about your house, about your money, about your relationship, about your parents, about your family, Philippians 4, 11, 13 says, I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, aka I know how to have nothing. I know how to abound. I know how to have a lot. In any and in every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. The idea here is that if you are a Christian, you can be content. It is mission possible. The Spirit is inside of you, indwelling in you, that if you think you can't be content, think again. The strength that is inside of you through the power of God is enough to help you grow in contentment. And some of you in this room are habitually discontent, and I want you to see that is a big problem. All those discontentments, all those insecurities, that's a problem because you are not recognizing what God has given to you, and you're not thankful for it, and you're not appreciative of it, and you're not content with it. And that's a slap in the face to God. Did you guys read this verse right here? How whiny do these people sound? First of all, they got more than one, but they're also like, I only got one. And they're like, fine, go take that over there. But that's too hard. It's like a whiny 13-year-old, right? Oh, what? Did he call me out? I did. It's whiny, right? That's what we are to God. When you say, God, you have not given me enough, you're whiny. I want you to see it's not just whininess, but it's also a slap in the face, and to use the biblical word for it, it's called sin. Ephraim and Manasseh were discontent, and it was a problem. Joshua tells these people to go into this land and to go do the work, to go drive out the forests, right? And then go drive these people out. And he tells a lot of the different tribes to do the exact same thing, and a lot of the tribes, they fail. So subpoint D, it's a reminder for us to never let up, but to keep on obeying God. Never let up, but keep on obeying God. And there's a bunch of verses that I have there on the screen to show you, to give you an example of how these people don't do what they're called to do. I'll read them real quick. This is the tribe of Judah. Joshua 15, verse 63. But the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the people of Judah could not drive out. So the Jebusites dwell with the people of Judah at Jerusalem to this day. Chapter 16, verse 10. This is Ephraim. It says, however, the Ephraimites did not drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer, and so the Canaanites have lived in the midst of Ephraim to this day, but have been made to do forced labor. Chapter 17, verse 12, just right above when they whine and complain. It says, verse 12, chapter 17, yet the people of Manasseh could not take possession of those cities, but the Canaanites persisted in dwelling in that land. And now when the people of Israel grew strong, they put the Canaanites to forced labor, but they did not utterly drive them out. AKA, they left squatters in the land, and they set up their house with some squatters in there. They did let up. They did start coasting, and they stopped obeying God. And we need to learn from the laziness of Israel and make sure that when we think about obeying God, we obey God all the way. Right? I think I've illustrated it before this way. It's like taking out the trash. Taking out the trash, this is probably what you picture in your mind, right? Taking the trash out. But in fact, that's actually a lie. Taking out the trash is not one part. It's actually a two-step process, right? It's taking out the trash and it's putting the bag back in. Raise your hand if you struggle with putting the bag back in. Me too, okay? I hate it because it smells, right? It's like, it's in your, like you put the bag in and it just fumes into your nose. I hate that. But you know what? You didn't take the trash out until you put the bag back in. The job's not finished. The job's not done until you finish it completely. The people of Israel, they took the trash out and they did not put the bag back in. And you know what your mom says when you take the trash out, you don't put the bag back in, and she drops her plate of spaghetti, right, in the thing, and it's like, no bag. Is mom happy or is mom mad? Like, mom's mad, right? Dad's mad. It's not good. Don't put your spaghetti in the trash bag or in the trash can without the bag. Finish the job. Israel, what they do here is they don't finish the job. This is what the land of Israel should have looked like. This map that I just showed you, this big, large-looking thing. This is what the map of Israel was like during the time of the judges. A sliver. The next slide. Not half as big as it should have been. It was good, but it wasn't where it should have been. Because they didn't drive these people out. They didn't finish the job. They took the trash out, but they didn't put the bag back in. And so I want you to learn to put the bag back in, okay? Put the bag back in when it comes to obeying God. Obeying him all the way, not coasting, not letting up. We are Christians that are always growing in holiness, always growing in our Bible reading, always growing in prayer, always growing in evangelism, not saying it's good enough, I can coast now. I think when I told you we were going to talk about land for 45 minutes, and some of you checked out, probably didn't see that there was actually more under the surface that we could actually learn and apply and learn about God and learn how to go faithfully obey him, to go put the bag back in. So, we learned a lot of things about God keeping promises, providing a place for his people, but I want you this week to go fight for contentment, taking the blessings that God has given you, faithfully and continually, habitually obeying him. This land promise section can actually change our lives if we let it. So let's go be faithful to God this week. Let's bow our heads and pray right now. God, we thank you so much for stories like this, God, though difficult for our brains to sometimes comprehend. But God, thank you for them. And I thank you for this time in this text this morning, these 7 chapters. God, I pray that these 7 chapters about land would transform our lives. God, transform the way that we think and put our faith and trust in you. God, thank you so much for this morning and for this opportunity to study your word in this way. God, we praise you and we thank you for your word. We pray now as we get to go out here in a few moments, look at all these different service posts. God, I pray that you would embolden us and encourage us to sign up to serve and to take the spiritual gifts that you've given us and to turn them back to you and to use them for you and for your glory. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.